Hi there, everyone. My name is Yadira Suarez. I am an associate realtor here with Empire, and I am also one of the trainers. And today's class, today's training, it's going to be in regards to rent and leases. We're going to review the rental application, the rental checklist that we have as a company. We're also going to do a sample contract to lease, which is the offer once our client decides to put in an offer on the rental unit that they like to proceed with. And we're also going to revise the lease agreement, the actual lease agreement. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we're going to start with the rental application, which is just a basic document. It's just information at a glance for our clients. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right in here. Going to my files where I have the rental application. Okay, pulling that up. Okay, so as you can see, the rental application is just a very simple document. Most of the times we're going to use the company rental application. A lot of other times we're going to be using the listing agent's rental application, and we are going to be using theirs if it's noted on the MLS, on the remarks or the broker's remarks. If it's noted in there to see attachments on the listing, or if it says use attachment for the rental application or whatever the case may be, then we're going to be using their form. Regardless of what form we do use, it's basically the same information, or most of the information, it's going to be similar, which is the applicants, how we see at the top, which is the main applicants information. On the second portion where it says other applicants, it's anyone else that's going to be living in the home with them. So if it's a married couple and they have children, their children's name, birthday, and relationship would be noted as other applicants. If it's their parents, mom, dad, grandparents, cousin, uncle, siblings, or whoever is going to be living in the house with them, okay? The main applicant is whoever is going to be signing the lease agreement and responsible for that lease term. We also have here tenancy history. They'll be asking for the current landlord information as reference. Therefore, you would see that they're asking for phone number and email addresses in there. They also ask for previous eviction or felony of any kind. If by any chance the answer is yes in any of these questions, it is always recommended to do a letter of explanation explaining the case, what happened, has it been dismissed, just a little bit of information that would help your case. As well as the employment history. The employment history, it's being asked here, and what they ask, it's employment for the main applicants, whoever is going to be responsible for the lease agreement. They're going to be asking for current employer, position, salary, supervisor's name, and so on. It also notes here where it says personal references, to note here references that there are some landlords that they actually do call and ask for references for the tenants. An emergency contact noted in here as well. If they have any pets that's going to be occupying the property with them, is being asked in here, pets, yes or no, and if so, the kind and the weight. And then the main applicants will sign the application form. Very easy, very straightforward, simple. Now we're going to go ahead and review the rental checklist. And this is just a checklist that Real Estate Empire provides once you sign with us. And basically what the checklist gives you, it's information at a glance, bullet points of what are those documents that we should be asking from that initial conversation with the client. When we speak to them, that initial call that we called them because we received the lead, we introduce ourselves. They tell us what they're looking for. We ask for a series of questions, area, budget, what are the criteria of the home that they're looking for, etc. And throughout the conversation, we should also note in there and let them know these bullet points in here. Just let them know that 99.9% of the rents does requires a moving cost of 3 months, which is the first bullet point. Make sure client has first, last, and security deposit, the 3 months moving cost. It could be first and last month and the security, or it could be first month and to security deposit. However, it's noted on the listing or however the landlord wants to hold it. Most of the times, the norm, usually it's first, last month and the security. We also ask for the credit check and the background check. Mainly the reason for the credit, they want to see FICO score. A lot of rental properties are inside a condominium or a homeowners association. And a lot of them do have a minimum requirement in terms of credit score. So it is always recommended to ask the client for their credit score and let them know that they will be having to provide a credit check and a background check. The background check in parentheses is says police station because it is very normal that you could go, your client can go to the police station and request their background check. During COVID and because of COVID, I don't know if the procedure has changed, but I've heard that they could go into the police station without an appointment, but the charge without the appointment would be $25. That's what I've heard. And the charge with an appointment is $5. This could be done through the police station by themselves. Also, they're going to be asking, most of the landlords and the listing agents will be asking for the last 2 to 3 pay stubs of their payment, his work payment. If it's a bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, however it is, okay, their pay stubs, if it's a W-2. If it's a 1099, I've come across a lot of requirements that they ask for tax returns. So do be prepared if you're working with a 1099. They most likely will be providing tax returns for the previous years and bank statements as well. Also, copy of their IDs as a form of identification and the rental application that we just reviewed and went over. Once they have all the documents, once you have all the documents requested, you're able to go ahead and put in an offer, a complete offer, the contract to lease, along with all the documents. Once the client is ready to put in an offer, okay, we're going to be doing a contract to lease. The contract to lease is going to be doing it right behind once we finish reviewing this document. And it's very simple. It's a very simple document where we're basically outlining the offer for that rental unit, okay? In the contract to lease, we're going to be reviewing the landlord and the tenant's name, as well as the payment and the 3 deposits. Once the offer is accepted, the first month deposit is a good faith deposit and will be given in the form of a cashier's check or money order, and it will be put into the escrow account that we in Real Estate Empire have, okay? There is no cash. We do not accept cash. And the other form of payment for the escrow deposit would be wire transfer. If the client does decides to do wire transfer, please do ask the office for the information to make sure you have the right account and the name and so on. Once the contract to lease, the offer is accepted, then your client will proceed to make that deposit. Once that deposit is being held on our end in the escrow account, that the company does have that cashier check, money order, or wire transfer on their end, then the office will go ahead and provide you with an escrow letter. The escrow letter does states the name of the client, whoever is providing the money, and also whoever is on the contract to lease and will be on the lease agreement. It does states the property that they're renting and the amount, okay? That letter is to be provided to the listing agent, letting them know that we have in fact received the escrow deposit and we have it on our end. Once the actual contract to lease it's accepted, then the lease agreement will be done by the listing agent. It's the 3rd bullet point. The actual lease will be done usually by the listing agent. If in the event the listing agent asks you to prepare the lease agreement, that is something that you could do, but typically, usually, the listing agent will go ahead and prepare it. So there would be no problems with that, but there's some cases that they're gonna ask you to do it. Once the lease agreement is signed by both parties, the client, your client, will go ahead and apply in the association. Once the client applies in the association, they will need to provide a copy of the lease agreement, which is the actual document letting the association know there is a lease agreement in place and both parties have signed it and they're just waiting for the screening of the association. The tenant should not, okay? They should not move into the unit prior to getting the approval from the association, okay? If applicable. They should not move into the unit prior to getting the letter of approval from the association. Once that letter of approval from the association is received, then you will be notified and then you would schedule a walkthrough and turn in the keys with the listing agent. Once that happens, you will need to notify the office, our bullet point in here, which says if Real Estate Empire Group is holding the escrow deposit, let the office know in advance within 24 hours before the moving day, because we need to prepare the checks. Remember the escrow deposit that we have holding on the account, that's the check that we need to prepare. And how that works is the office would hold the commission for the broker for Real Estate Empire and yours, that portion, and then would prepare the check for the remaining. So let's say if the rent, it's $1,000 a month and the escrow deposit was for that first month of $1,000, then typically the commission for rent is half a month. So once you let the office know 24 hours in advance that you're ready for your walkthrough to prepare the check for whatever transaction this is and this client, okay, the office would hold the broker's portion for the office and for your commission, and then we'll give you the remaining, which you should be taking that check to your walkthrough and provide it to the listing agent. Okay, this will conclude the checklist. Is just very simple. It's just information for you to have on your back end. So when you're talking to your client, you would explain the documents that will be required at some point. For the credit and the background check, we could also do it through the Miami Realtors Association. Just like when we log in into Matrix, there's the Matrix icon, okay? There's also an icon in there, that's the rental screening. We could go ahead and do that screening for them by providing the link to the clients, and then the client, once they receive the link, they go in there, they'll fill in the information that the system asks, and then they prepare a report. Once that report is ready, we will be notified via email. And that way it's even better because the client just gets the link and they'll do they'll fill in the whole information and they would actually pay for it themselves. It's $25 per person. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into Matrix. We're gonna go into the MLS and we're gonna go and dive into a contract to lease to show you how you would prepare a contract to lease. Oh, I have my Miami Getaway here. Okay, so once we log into Miami Realtors Association, then you go through the Miami Getaway and then you put in your license and your password. It will bring you to your dashboard, your window, okay? Typically for going into Matrix, we use this icon right here, okay? For simplicity, which another platform that we use a lot, and we have another class on that, it's this platform in here. And for the rental screening application that I just went over with you once we were reviewing the checklist, is this one in here, this tenant screening. For the tenant screening, to be able to send the link to your client, you do need to go ahead and put in an address. an address, one of the rental property that you've been seeing with your client. It does not matter if at the end they end up renting that property or not. It's not linked to that particular property. You could use the screening for any other property. But in order to do so, you do need to go ahead and put in an address. And when you go into the rental screening, you're gonna go into get started and you're gonna go to the rental application. And you're gonna do this portion right in here with this rental application, because it's gonna give you the whole screening check, background check and credit check as well, okay? So now let's move in and go into my matrix, because I'm gonna go into the MLS, and what I'm gonna do is go into one of the listings from the office, from a rental listing. Okay, in here, let's just select this one. And by selecting this one, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare my contract to lease, okay? So I'm gonna copy the MLS and open the actual listing. I'm going to go to the folio, okay? The folio, it's this hyperlink in blue right here, this number. And what that is gonna tell me, it's the name that the property is under. So I'm gonna look for the owner's name. It could be an individual, it could be a corporation, a company, or it could even be a trust, okay? So if I go into the folio, which is linked to the public records, I'm gonna go ahead and look for the name, which in this case, it would be the landlord of the property. So it's current owner, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy their name. I'm going back to matrix, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the transaction to create my form simplicity, to create my contract to lease. And I'm gonna start working on the transaction via form simplicity, and the way that we could do it from the listing itself to generate all this information into the transaction, it's gonna be here where it says FS, right at the top of the photo, right next to the IMAP world map. Right in here, it says form simplicity. We're gonna click on form simplicity, and the system is gonna bring us to the platform. Once we are in this platform, it brings and it generates all the information from the listing directly into the transaction backend that we're creating. The top version, it says property information, and this is all related to the property, the address, the full address, the legal description, year built, bedroom, bathrooms, and etc. The next portion is the listing information. It gives us the listing ID. Okay, this MLS number is like the ID, like the social security for each listing inside the MLS. Each listing inside the MLS has a different number. Some of them starts with the letter A, others with R, others with F, okay? Each listing has their unique MLS ID to it. Then we're gonna have the seller landlord information, and in this area is where we're gonna enter their name that we copied from the folio number, which is linked to the public records. And then in here, we don't have that information because we are working in this case with the tenant, not the landlord. So the next portion is the seller landlord agent information. And in here, it would be the listing agent and the brokerage firm they're working with. Where it says purchase price, this will be for the monthly dues, okay, the rent, $2,000. This form, this transaction, this back end of the transaction that we're filling in, it's the same as rent or purchase. And that's why it says buyer tenant or seller landlord. It is the same format, it's the same form that we use for either or. It's just what changes is the transaction type, okay? So the purchase price in this case, it's the monthly fee, which is $2,000. Now in this portion where it says buyer tenant information, this is our client. So we're gonna put, I'm gonna put in our client and Fred Smith, okay? So let's say it's two of them. And then in this portion right here, you could go ahead and fill in your client's information, email, phone number, the address, which is the one on the ID that they provided with. Buyer, tenant, agent information is your information as the realtor working with the tenant, and of course your brokerage firm. Once we've completed this portion in here, this is to create a transaction, we're gonna save to a transaction. By saving to a transaction, we have the option, because we have this pop-up window, and we have the option to select a transaction if we've been working with this client in the past, or if it's the second or third offer that we are putting in. So then that's considered an existing transaction, and we could select their previous transactions in here instead of selecting a new one. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna say that we are creating one from scratch. We're not selecting from an existing one, so we're just gonna leave it blank. The street address is gonna stay as it is, okay? It's the property address from the transaction that we're working. Every red asterisk that this has means that we have to fill in their box, okay? The system is not gonna let us go ahead and save the new transaction without each box being filled. So the street address remains the same. This portion where it says transaction name, we're gonna check same as address. And we're also gonna hyphenate it. And this is just something that I do, so I know what transaction, what address belongs to which client. So I'll put in the client's name or their last names, however you want to go ahead and do it, and it's easier for you. But I always find it that by hyphenating it next to the address, it's a lot easier once I'm going through an existing one and I have to select from a previous one, okay? So I'll go ahead and put in their names and Fred Smith. Property type, this is residential. In here you have the option of residential, commercial, farm and ranch, or vacant land. So if you're working with a residential property, you just do residential. If it's a commercial client and they're renting a warehouse, for example, then you would select commercial. So it would be residential. And transaction type, this is a lease rental. So we're gonna put in lease rental. And we're gonna save to a new transaction. Once we save it to a new transaction, it brings us automatically into the transaction tab inside Form Simplicity. And this is the transaction that we've created, okay? In here, we're gonna start building our transaction, and we're gonna start looking into the documents to build this transaction. So under forms, we have add blank forms or add forms package. The difference between both is that if we go to add blank forms, we have a library. And the best way to search in the library is by going into Florida, because it's all the documents regarding real estate related to Florida, okay? And we search by forms. We do lease. If we put in the word lease in there, it automatically populates all the documents that has the word lease on it. And we know that we're doing a contract to lease, which is the offer to put into that property. So we will select contract to lease. The other way to do so, and the easiest way, it's to go to under forms, add forms package. If we go to add forms package, this is the package forms that the broker has created in Real Estate Empire that includes all the documents that we would use in the real estate transaction. If not all, like majority of them, like 99.9% of all the documents, including the contract to lease, and including the walkthrough that we are supposed to do once we're gonna go ahead and the keys are gonna be given to the clients at the end of the transaction when they're ready to move in. And it also includes the rental application that we reviewed at the very beginning, okay? So we're going into contract to lease, and the best way I say of the form package is because Linda, which is our broker, has already created these packages for us pre-filled, okay? All of these documents are already pre-filled in most of the areas. It's just a matter of us going in and edit the areas that relates to our client and to the transaction. So once we select it, we see it here as a hyperlink in blue. Now we've built this document into the transaction. Now we go into the document by clicking on top of contract to lease, the blue hyperlink, and we bring in the offer, the contract to lease. It comes in automatically pre-filled. We just have to make sure we edit the information pertaining to the transaction and our client. It comes in automatically with the landlord's name that we copied from the folio at the very beginning. It brings in our tenant's name, which we added them while we were building the transaction, okay, in the back end. It automatically brings in 3 days. These 3 days means that I'm creating this offer and I'm giving the listing agent and the landlord 3 days to approve it. Okay, you could go on top of those 3 days and you could actually select an actual day. You could say I'm giving them until Monday or until Sunday, and you couldn't select an actual day, or you could leave it as the 3 days or put in 2 days. Okay. It's gonna come automatically mark this box that says landlord, and this means that the lease will be created by the landlord. Okay, the landlord will create the lease. In this case, the listing agent who is representing the landlord. The second portion of the contract to lease, it's mentioning about the deposits, the escrow deposit. Okay, it's saying that it's pre-filled for $1,500. We have to make sure we update it and upload the correct amount, which is $2,000 in this example. So it's saying that Real Estate Empire is holding $2,000, or will be holding $2,000 once this offer is approved on our escrow account. The third portion is the property address, which auto-populates, okay, since we merged from the listing itself into Form Simplicity. It says that the property will be unfurnished or furnished. Most of the time it's unfurnished unless you're working with a lot of the properties in downtown Brickell area, Miami Beach. Many of those condos, they also come furnished. So if that's the case, we mark the box if it's a furnished property. In parentheses, it says attached inventory, which is typically given to you by the listing agent. Then on the bottom line in here, it says names of the people that will be living in there, okay, in that property. This would be the other occupants that we've selected, that we put in their names on the rental application. So if there's no one else living in the property with them, we will leave this portion blank. We would erase that, okay? But if there's someone else living with Yadira and Fred, we could put in their name in this area. If it's the grandmother, okay, we could put in the name of the person and put in grandmother, okay? If it's their children, we could put in 3 children. Ages, we could put in 5, 10, and I don't know, 13, okay? Just like that. This would be the area that we would put in the other occupants. If there's no one else, please remember to delete whatever it says on this line. Remember that this is a sample filled in document so that you, once you're working and filling out your document, you know what areas to upload and edit, okay? The fourth paragraph, it's talking about the lease term. The lease terms would begin on, let's say it will begin on August 1st. August 1st, and it ends on the following year, a day before it begins, okay? So the lease begins on August 1st. And it ends the year after, but the day before it begins. So if the lease starts on August 1st, the lease, if the lease starts August 1st, 2021, the lease ends July 31st, 2022. Okay, it begins on August 1st and it ends the following year, a day before it begin date. Now we're going into the money due before occupancy, and it's this paragraph in here. This area, it's graded out, which means we don't have access to edit it. This is going to be edited once we update these numbers in this allocation areas. So it's talking about the first month rent. It goes in here. We're going to say it's 2,000 and it would be upon acceptance. You could leave it as upon acceptance, or you could actually enter in an actual date. But you could just leave it upon acceptance, which means that $2,000, it's talking about the deposit that is going to be held in Real Estate Empire escrow account. And it's going to be provided once this contract to lease, this offer is accepted. Then we are stipulating that the last month rent of $2,000 and the security deposit of another $2,000 will be given upon moving date. And again, you could leave it moving date, or you could actually click on top of it and create an actual date, which this means once your client is approved by the association, if applicable, okay, you schedule your walkthrough and your moving day, which means your client will provide the remainder deposit, the last month and the security deposit, will be bringing that monies in on that walkthrough day, along with you providing the remainder of the escrow deposit, okay? So if the association, and here's a security deposit for association, if in the event the association requires a security deposit, it would go in this area as well. So let's say the association requires a security deposit of the same monthly due as per the agreement, you could put in those extra $2,000 in there, and you could write in the exact day, or you could do upon applying to association, okay? Upon applying to the association. If in the event they have a pet and there is a pet deposit, it would also go in here. And let's say the pet deposit is $250, you could just add in there $250, and then you could stipulate a day or when that deposit is given. Always make sure that you know if that is a refundable or non-refundable deposit if there is a pet, okay? Okay, so let's just erase this. And now you see how these three deposits in here, these three money dues, how it changed the total sum at the top. And now it's saying that the 3 months to move in, it's $6,000. That's what your client needs to have in order to move in. Following the bottom here where it says the paragraph 2 deposit would be credited as follows. We are always going to credit the escrow deposit that we have that is held on Real Estate Empire's escrow account. We are going to credit that towards the first month rent. So you gotta make sure it's this area, the first month's rent, that square here, it's marked, it's check marked, and to stipulate the amount on this box. Following that, paragraph 6 is talking about the total lease term rents, which is the monthly rent times the 12 months. So in this case, it's 24,000. This is the lease terms rent. Now it's stipulated in here that the rent is going to be due on a monthly basis on the first of every month. And you're gonna update your monthly rent, okay? And 7 and 8 talking about pets and smoking. If pets are prohibited or permitted, we're gonna mark it in here. If it's permitted, we're gonna leave, change it to permitted, and then we're gonna put in the breed, the kind, and the weight of the pet. And then smoking, most of the time, is always gonna be prohibited. The following page, we're going into utilities on paragraph 9, and then we're going to find out what's included in this rent. We're going back to our listing, going back to matrix. And then we're going to go see on the rent portion what's included. So in here it says rent pay includes electricity, water, sewer, yard maintenance. Okay. I'm gonna make sure there's no other remarks somewhere. Perfect. So we are actually gonna copy what's included. Copy. Going back to our contract to lease. And we are going to paste it in this area. In here, we're saying that rent includes this: water, electricity, and yard maintenance. On paragraph 10, it's talking about maintenance, okay? And it says that the landlord would be responsible for maintenance and repair of the property except for, and most of the times, usually in here is for any repair or maintenance up to, up to $150, okay? So the landlord would be responsible for any maintenance and repair of the property except for any repair and maintenance up to $150, which the tenant agrees to maintain and repair. So any repairs or maintenance up to $150 will be tenant's responsibility. Anything above that would be owner's landlord responsibility. Paragraph 11 is talking about the association approval, and then in here we're just going to put in whatever it says on the MLS. If we go back to the listing, under application fee, this one says 0, but if it had an application, it would say it in here, and it could be 50, 75, 100, 200, 150. Whatever the cost is, it would be stipulated in this area. So we put in here the cost, 150, 0, whatever it is. And it is the tenant's responsibility to pay this fee, and it's also non-refundable application fee. So in the event that the tenant does not get approved by the association, that fee is non-refundable. We also have to verify with the listing agent or call the association, because most of the times it's the application fee plus an extra fee for a processing fee of an extra $50, or they also have a moving fee of $500 that is refundable, and that is like to hold the elevators or something like that, to make sure once the move is done, the elevator, the stairs, the hallway, or anything, it's not damaged, okay? So always make sure what other costs are associated on the association's portion. That's not only the application fee. Typically, this application fee and other fees that are associated with that as well. And then on this where it says an approval by ASAP, we could leave it ASAP, or again, put in an actual date. Under additional terms on paragraph 12, it's very simple, something that, for example, if when you saw the unit, the washer and dryer has the hookup, but it doesn't have the appliances, and the listing agent tells you that it's just that it's on back order, for example. So you would just note it in here. Washer and dryer to be installed. Currently on back order, as per listing agent or landlord, owner, whoever, okay? You could make those type of notes in here. In this area, it would also be if the kitchen stove, the range, the refrigerator, or any appliances is gonna be replaced, you could note it in this area. If the floor on the master bedroom or the second bedroom is gonna be replaced, anything that will be replaced or fixed or repaired before you move in and has been negotiated and talked through prior, You should note it here in the contract to lease portion. Paragraph 13, it's talking about background credit reference check, you know, that the landlord determines that the tenant's background credit or reference check is not acceptable, the landlord may terminate this contract. And of course, the deposit will be released back to the tenant. Paragraph 14 is going to be marked as no, and this is for any member of the active military, anyone that you're working with. If you're working with a military person, then you will be putting yes, but if not, it's no. Paragraph 15 is talking about the failure to perform, whether it's the tenant or the landlord. It's just very vague in this area right here. It's more in details on the lease agreement. And typically it's just, you know, like if the tenant decides to terminate the lease prior to the 12-month term period, most of the time there is a cancellation fee. And the cancellation fee amount will be stipulated on the lease agreement. And it could be from 2 to 3 months, a month, however it is stipulated. On mine, I put in 2-month cancellation penalty if the lease is canceled prior to the date. Then paragraph 16 is just talking about the brokers or the licensees, and it would be the tenant's agent and the broker, as well as the landlord's agent and the brokerage firm. The following page, it's for signature on both parties, tenant and landlord. And this is the contract to lease. Very, very simple. It's only a few pages. It's only 3 pages. Very simple. It's at a glance. Once this is approved, it's when you go ahead and proceed with providing the escrow deposit into Real Estate Empire, and then Empire will go ahead and the company, the office, will go ahead and provide the escrow letter to be shared with your client and with the listing agent, letting them know that the money has been submitted and everything is looking great to move forward. Now we're going to go ahead and review. We're going to review the actual lease agreement. I have one here. I'm going to pull my lease agreement out. Okay. And this is an actual lease agreement. The lease agreement will be pulled directly from Form Simplicity. So if we go to Form Simplicity, actually, if we're going to, Form Simplicity, where we had it. Okay. Okay, once to save it, I'm sorry. To save it, you go here, you're done with your document, you save it, and then you exit out. Okay. To look for the lease agreement, you go back to the Add Forms package. And in here where it says lease sample. Okay. We're going to the residential lease for apartment unit, multifamily rental housing, and any other duplex. We add it to the transaction. We click on the actual agreement. Okay. And this is the lease agreement. Okay. So again, it's pre-filled from the broker, and it would auto-populate the landlord and the tenant's information because we created this lease agreement under this transaction. So I'm gonna go ahead, this is how you obtain the lease agreement, but I'm gonna go ahead and review mine, which is filled in completely from the tenant and landlord. Okay. So this is the same document. It's your information. It's just basically saying that we're real estate agents. We are not lawyers, and by no means are we providing any legal advice on this matter. The landlord or tenant has to notify if they cannot read English and understand the lease agreement. Everyone signs, the landlord signs, and then you, as the landlord agent, or the tenant agent would also sign this first page. Going into the terms on the second page of the lease agreement, it's very simple. The lease agreements are typically for 12-month period, not longer than that on the one lease document. It could be for a short term, which is 6 months, or it could be a 12-month period. It puts in the beginning and end date of the lease. Remember, it begins on May 3rd, 2021, but it ends on May 2022, but a day before it begins, okay? So it would be this information, it would be related from whatever is stipulated on the contract to lease. The dates may change a little depending on the association approval process. So the dates may be off here and there. The lease is between name of the owner of the property. In this case, the property was under a corporation, okay? It could be under a corporation or individual or a trust. So the name of the owner, which is the landlord, and the name of the person who is leasing the property, your clients. Then it would be asking for the landlord's and the tenant's contact information, and this information will be on this area. Property rented, and we're talking about the property address, the unit number, the condominium name, okay? And it's also talking about what's included, okay? In this case, it's the electric range, refrigerator, dishwasher, microwave. These are the kitchen appliances, what's included. I stipulated it's unfurnished, but if it is furnished, we would put furnished and attach an inventory. On the following, it's talking about the common areas. Then we're going into the rent payments and the charges, which is the portion. This is the portion of the contract to lease that we stipulated, like the first month that is part of the escrow, and then the second, the last deposit and the security deposit that will be provided upon move-in. All that amount will be in the final sum of $6,000 moving cost, okay? So in here it's saying that the installments, which is to rent, it's $2,000 and it's due on the 3rd of each month. Or it could be the 1st, it could be the 10th, however the lease terms agreements are. This portion in here, the first portion, it's talking about if the tenant is paying advance rent. And if that's the case, then you will fill in this area. If there is an advance rent, if they're paying 3 months extra in advance or a whole year in advance, they would go on this area. Most of the lease agreements are on a month-by-month case, okay? And it's just stipulated here on the next paragraph, deposit, advance rent, and late charges. On the first box, it says security deposit of $2,000 to be paid upon signing the lease, which that is part of the monies that is due once the moving day and the walkthrough is scheduled. It says advance rent in the amount of $2,000 for the rental installment periods. In here, you would put in what that advance rent was. And in this case, remember, it's first month rent, okay? Which is that escrow deposit, that first month's rent, which is that money that is going to be held as the commission for both parties, for the listing agent and the tenant's agent. If there is a pet deposit, it's going to be here in this area. In here, we also put in a late charge amount, okay? So the rent, it's due 5 days within the first 5 days of the month or the days that it's supposed to be, okay? If it's not paid within that time frame, there is an extra charge of $50. And there is a $75 bad check fee. The next portion of the lease, it's being worked how the tenant is going to be paying the landlord. Okay, so in this case, you're going to put in the owner's landlord's name, and it's gonna be the payments are gonna be made by check, by wire, by direct debit, however it is addressed and negotiated in here. In my case, it is direct debit. The landlord in this case, it's out of the country, he's foreign, so they're doing it by direct debit, and I've provided the information. All of the other, the next part in the maintenance section, it's stipulated what's included by the landlord and what it's going to be on the tenant's side. And it's checked mark, okay? Lock and keys, then the landlord, like the running water, hot water, lawn, like all of that, it's part of the rent. In here, we're putting change AC filters every month, okay? And then in here would be like the $150 of any cost up to $150, how we put it in on the contract to lease. In my case, it's 200. So anything that's over 200, the landlord would take care. Anything that's under 200 would be running by the tenant expenses. On the next portion, it says utilities, and this is what was provided on that section on the contract to lease and what is also stipulated on the listing inside the MLS. The serviceman portion as well, landlord access to the premises. Another box that is checked is approval contingency, and then in here, it would say tenant. The other one, it says landlord. If there's gonna be a renewal or an extension of the lease. The lead-based paint, it's if the property, the lease property was built on or prior to 1978, okay? If that was the case, then everyone would need to sign and initial these areas right in here. The lessor and the lessee. And then one of the last pages, it would be the signature of the owner, landlord, the agent, owner, landlord's agent, and then of course the signature of the tenant and the tenant's agent. On this portion where it says, in this portion right here, it says tenant's personal property. We're always going to check this portion, and the tenant is going to initial and sign, because this is saying that in the event of something happening, the tenant leaving the premises, the death of the tenant, something happens that they leave the property and they leave personal belongings inside the storage unit or inside the unit itself, that the landlord, it is not responsible for that personal property, okay? Then this would be your information, the person who is preparing the agreement and the office. In this area where it says early termination fee, liquidated damage addendum, in this area is where I put in that if the tenant decides to terminate the lease prior to its due date, prior to the 12th month, the fee that he would need to pay, it would be $4,000, okay? Which in this case, it was a 2-month rent. Then signature. And every page has initials at the bottom, just like a purchase agreement, okay? And every page needs to be initialed where the initials are required and sign where a signature is required, okay? So I've gone ahead and put in my contact information under the chat, okay? So if in the event once you're working on your contract to lease or working with the rent, and if you have any questions, feel free to call me. Feel free to send me a text or send me an email. My number is 305-788-8352. And my email is ysuarezrealtor@gmail.com. Thank you so much for taking the time and seeing my training and being in my class with me today. And I look forward to helping you in the future of any kind. Thank you.